Tool Tuesday, and the tool for today is Access Consciousness bars. And this is a tool that I would say I don't talk a whole lot about, mostly because it's not like it's something you would have to go learn. Not necessarily learn. Of course, you could go have a session somewhere too. It's a little bit different than a lot of the tools. And I have to say, it's one of the tools that has shifted so much for me personally, and I know for many others also. And if you have a story about bars, please post, let me know. I would love to read it. It's just one of those things that just continuously changes. And so bars, for anybody who doesn't know, it's Access Consciousness bars. And I believe you can go to Access Consciousness bars. Like if you Google that, you'll find a bunch of information, plus of course classes coming up too, and places where you can get your bars ran. And it's basically I'm showing you my hands, but you can't see them. So you get 32 different points on your head the practitioner just holds different points it varies, but a session would probably take about an hour, sometimes longer if you have longer. It really just depends. And for most of the time, you feel really, really relaxed. And sometimes it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes the points themselves can feel like, painful, or not painful, but like a little bit sore, a little bit tense. There's like maybe a lot of energy built up in those spots. Sometimes it can feel like that. Also, sometimes it can feel like you just want it to stop, or it's like it just feels a lot. And of course, always do what works for you, but I always encourage people to really be present with those times, because most times it just feels delicious and relaxing and oh my gosh, you don't want it to stop. And then there's the odd time where it kind of feels like, and a lot of times to me, that's when things are really shifting and changing. And so for me personally, I had started listening to an Access Consciousness radio show in January of 2011. And back then, believe it or not, there was nobody doing Access Consciousness in Western Canada. There was one gal in Vancouver, which I live an airplane away from. And then there was people out in Ontario. And that was it. And if you've looked at a map, Canada's a big freaking country. And so in June of 2011, there was a gal in Edmonton that brought a facilitator from the Yukon to facilitate bars in Edmonton. So hubby and I went, and another friend of ours, she joined us there. And it was just like, it felt like I found magic. I have no other way to say that, but like having my bars ran was just like, there was so much release in it. And of course, having the whole day class where you get your bars ran twice and you run 2 sets of bars. So, just that alone was phenomenal. And then what hubby and I did was when we went home, we would actually swap bars at least once a week. And not for a reason. It wasn't like, hey, let's see if we can create something. Like, it was just like, let's just do this because it feels good. And we were both pretty quick to notice that the other one was easier to be with if they'd had their bars ran. And then in August of that year, so the couple months after we'd taken the class, we actually swapped bars 7 days in a row. Now, for as much change as that created, we've not done it since, which I think is interesting, and not right or wrong, just interesting. But it's like there was so much. And so we were doing this. I'd been using the tools, all the different tools that this gal was sharing in her radio shows since June, and then since January, and then took bars in June. And one thing that I had always had, and I have taken so many different modalities to attempt to fix, to heal, to change, to get rid of, whatever I wanted to call it, was what I've always referred to as underlying anxiety. So I always had this buzz of anxiety in my world. So I could be sitting at home on the couch by myself, watching TV, nothing in my world, and I would still have that buzz. And then if we add to it, so now let's put me out. I was running my business by then. So let's say I'm going to go do, talking on the stage in front of a couple hundred people. Well, now that buzz of anxiety is like, huge. And so I'd done all sorts of things for years, tried all sorts of modalities, everything for years to change that. Nothing changed it. So I had got to the point where it was like, well, that's just who I am. That's the way it is. Because I had all sorts of modalities. I'd done all sorts of things. Nothing was changing it. So this is just the way it was. So then enter Access in, again, January of 2011, then bars in June of 2011. And 6 months later, I woke up and I realized that anxiety was gone. It was gone. And I didn't know when it left. This to me is still the funniest phenomena within Access that of any other thing that I've ever worked with, is that so many things change without you focusing on them, without you figuring them out, that you don't even know they change. Like, they're just gone. And unless you're in a situation where you would normally do something, where you'd normally act a certain way, or like, you don't know it changed because it's so just gone. And the going of it was so easy. In most cases, it was just like, it was. So when I realized that the underlying anxiety that I had had my entire life was gone, I was like, oh my gosh. And of course I tried to figure it out, of course. And then I stopped myself and I realized I know getting my bars ran as regularly as I do, that there was so much change, that there was so much, yes, there was so much. And really, yes, with letting all of that anxiety go, the fun, the joyfulness, the marvelous sense of humor, all of that was able to be there. Because if you've never had anxiety, just so you know, it can really feel like you are totally using all of your energy to contain it. Where it was like, especially when it was bigger. At home on the couch by myself, the underlying anxiety, all right, fine. But as I went out into the world, into the places, did the speaking, did the sessions, all the stuff I was doing, there was still this so much energy in an attempt to control that anxiety so it didn't kind of get away on me, so to speak. And I do have a whole radio show about this too, guys, that I'll put a link in below, or below, above, wherever, so that you guys can listen in if you would like more of the whole process. And really it is, if you haven't tried yet, just get your bars ran just once. You don't have to, commit to it for the rest of your life, but just once, try it. Check it out, see what it is for you, and know that it is a huge tool for many people. May not be for you, but it is for many people that can really assist. I know for myself, at this point, about twice a week is how often I get my bars ran. Sometimes more. When I'm facilitating, I get them ran every day, just to really create so much more space. It gets me out of my head and my figuring things out and my control that I'm so freaking good at, and gets me into possibilities and into the spaciousness and the energy of course, who we truly be, who I truly be, who you truly be. And it's something so magical. And of course, there are Access Bars classes, unlike in 2011, there are Access Bars classes everywhere around the world. I mean, not everywhere, I suppose, but so many places. And just go. And of course, you can go get your bars ran also. You don't have to take a class. Really find what works for you. And then I always say to people, if you know somebody, like if you have a friend or somebody in the family who has the same interests as you, bring them with you. to the class if you're taking a class, because what that does is now you've got someone you can play with. Now, of course, somebody can run your bars that has the head chart. Maybe you took the class and you can tell them what points to hold. That's fine too. And it's nice when you don't have to pay attention when you're getting your bars ran, when you can kind of drop into that really sweet, sweet spot of relaxation and deep. Every once in a while, there's a snore that comes out like that. To me, that's the awesomeness. And however you get them done, try it out. There's just been so much. I mean, some of you have probably heard of Dane here, the co-founder of Access. I mean, he was on the verge of suicide, and he got his bars ran, and it changed everything for him. And what else? You don't have to be on the verge of suicide to try it out, but just know it's one of the tools that are available that just can change everything. So Cindy Lynn asks a great question. She says, do you find it more effective when you do verbal processing too? Cindy Lynn, no. So here's my thing. And this is what I talk about in my bars class, is that verbal processing, and I know you know this, Cindy Lynn, but I just want to explain it to everybody. Verbal processing is for, when I would ask you a question and I would run the clearing statement and all of that. So that's a tool from Access Consciousness. That's one of the many, many, many brilliant tools. Bars is another brilliant tool from Access Consciousness. And often, and I used to do this myself when I facilitated a bars class, is I would mix the two so much that people didn't recognize that you could do one without the other. So a lot of people, how I found out that I was not doing it the way that was maybe creating greater is that people would come to me after, they come to a bars class, or I'd see them on the street or whatever. And I would just say, hey, how's it going? Are you running bars? What's going on? And people would say no. And I was like, what? Why not? And they would explain that they couldn't do bars like I could. What? You can't touch somebody's head like I can? Like I didn't understand. But what I realized is the confusion that was going on was that I was merging the verbal processing and bars so much that if people weren't familiar with it, they saw it as one modality. And it's like, no. So I actually rarely use verbal processing with bars, Cindy Lynn. And that's why. One, because a lot of times people are so, I'm going to say addicted, that's maybe not the correct term, on their mind that they when they get on the table to get their bars ran, that's the only place they stay. And bars is about receiving for your body. So when somebody comes in, I'll have a chat with them beforehand. We might do some verbal processing to clear whatever. But when they get on the table, it's not about verbal processing for me. Now, if they said to me, I want you to verbal process me, and this is what the session is with bars, of course I would do that. It's their session. They can choose that. And usually if I can have a conversation with them, let them know we can do a little verbal processing beforehand, and if they just allow themselves to receive on the table. And that may include some verbal processing, and often it doesn't. You're welcome, Cindy Lynn, and I know it's confusing, and there might be people who would disagree with me, and I'm totally okay with that. In my experience, I have seen people receive so much more when they get out of your head. When you're not laying there trying to figure out a problem or trying to, talk about something. If you give yourself that space. And so when I have a client, what I do is I just allow them, and I say to them before they get on the table, we've had our little chat, maybe done some clearings. They get on the table and I just say, you can sleep, you can talk, you can do whatever is comfortable for you. They get on the table and I don't say a word unless they say something to me. And if they were to say, I went to the sale at the mall, it was so amazing. I bought a new shirt. I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. I wouldn't ask them, tell me about the shirt. So I don't engage in the conversation, if that makes sense. Because if you've had a bar session, you know that there's this spaciousness of like, and sometimes when you get on the table, there's maybe you feel a little awkward with the silence or whatever. And so you try to fill it, but then if the other person doesn't necessarily engage, and I don't say a word, I've talked to them, but I don't bring them into like, tell me about the shirt, what was going on at the mall, all of that sort of a thing. So it's just this different spaciousness. What else might be possible if we allowed ourselves to receive from everything, everyone, and asked for more of what we would like, and we're aware of our points of views around it. So if you haven't tried bars, I would go to the accessconsciousness.com, search facilitators, find a bars facilitator in your area, check it out. If it really intrigues you, get your butt to a class. Man, oh man, oh man, the magic in a class, and so much more. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I am so incredibly grateful for each and every one of you. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to sharing Tool Tuesday with you next week.